Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bill Bates with the Council on Competitiveness. Hope everybody's enjoying the forum so far. We have got a terrific discussion lined up right now. I've got a fantastic panel joining me to talk about exploring the future of sustainable production and work. I'm joined up here on the virtual stage by Joan Gable, President of University of Minnesota, Greg Hill, President and Chief Operating Officer, Hess Corporation, Noel Kinder, Chief Sustainability Officer with Nike, Renee Lammers, Chief Science Officer with PepsiCo, John McIntyre, Chief Executive Officer with Motif Foodworks, and Nick Pinchuk, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer of Snap-on Tools, and so far the leader in the clubhouse for the best background. What we're going to talk about today is obviously, as I said, the future of sustainable production and work. Here's how I'm going to try and proceed. I'm going to take just a couple minutes to frame the conversation, which I fully admit is an extremely broad topic area, but we're going to put it in the context of the exciting report that we released earlier today, Competing in the Next Economy. If you haven't downloaded it yet, please go to our website and do so. I will then pose some questions to our panelists and hopefully pretty much get out of the way at that point in time. So let me start right here. Production and work are inextricably linked. We have been discussing all afternoon today the disruptions to the economy from new technologies and new processes. Well, that disruption is very much affecting the way that we make things, and it is affecting the skills that are necessary for Americans and as many Americans as possible to be a part of this process. Add to the challenge the idea of needing to do this in a sustainable manner, and you have the impetus for our conversation here this afternoon, and really the impetus for our national commission overall. Among some of the issues that we asked our commissioners and our various working groups to address over the last several months were expectations for the future of sustainable production and consumption, the nature of evolving workforce skills, particularly in light of challenges around automation and artificial intelligence and increasing technical skills needs in the economy. The importance of greater engagement by more Americans in the innovation economy. And then finally, strengths and roadblocks of U.S. entrepreneurship and the startup engine that drives so much of our economic activity. So with that, I want to jump right in and get our panel engaged. The first area I want to talk about is the pressure to make production and consumption, both sides of the equation, more sustainable is very much increasing. How do we manufacture? How do we rise to this challenge and make manufacturing more sustainable and look at it more as an opportunity as opposed to something that has to be overcome? And maybe I could tee that up for Renee and Greg and Noel and then others. So Renee, let me turn to you first.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for having me. Listen, I represent the food industry, so my viewpoint determines my point of view. But what I do believe is that the same advances in digitization, AI, big data, advanced analytics that are disrupting industry or have disrupted industries like retail, financial services, healthcare, is also now entering in the world of CPG in the foods industry. So for food companies like PepsiCo, it's all about transforming the way we grow, the way we produce, the way we distribute, the way we actually consume food is going to fundamentally change because of that. And by so doing, what we hope is, of course, and that's the link to the overall sustainable development goals we have, broadly speaking, is really about building global sustainable food system. I think that's what I think is going to be critically important. So the notion of digitization, the idea that we need to get connected. There is digitization happening already in the agro space, but we need to start connecting the dots. I do believe that manufacturing, we're already doing pilots where we're building digital twins, decarbonizing some of our footprints, all the way from seed to grow to packaging. So it's an end-to-end system we are building. So digitization would be my view for the foods industry to really continue to focus on, also from a US. And the report is addressing to that, of course, to a large degree. So it's good to see that. And my last point is actually around, it's not necessarily only about investing in these technologies, because I always tell my own team, listen, science and technology is accelerating at a pace unprecedented, but my R&D budget don't follow always that. So we also need to outsmart our competitors. And outsmarting is not only about what you do, it's about how you work, collaboration, strategic partnership, having a global view in terms of where you can source technology. So it's not only about the what, but the how as well. Thank you, Bill. Back to you.
Oh, terrific. Greg, thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm going to come at it with a different angle. So, sustainability, means a lot of things, but, to me, sustainability is how does, in this space, how does the U.S. maintain its edge? And, one of the ways that the U.S. maintains its edge, and I'll go back to the 2004 Innovate America report, was, how do you turbocharge manufacturing production renaissance in an unexpected era of energy abundance? And the key phrase here being energy abundance, which then translates to affordable energy. So, energy costs are 2 to 3 times cheaper in the U.S. than they are in most other parts of the world. So to me, this maintaining access to affordable energy is probably the most important key, driving U.S. competitiveness and national security. So the dilemma in my mind is, how do we think about affordable energy, which right now is oil and gas, in a world that's increasingly becoming anti-oil and gas? I think, just quickly, to me, it starts with, recognition of the facts. It's got to be an all of the above strategy. You can't eliminate oil and gas. It's not going away. The IEA just put out their recent scenarios, and I won't dwell on them. But even under sort of the most aggressive climate change scenario, if you look out to 2040, oil and gas is still 47% of the energy mix, even in the most aggressive scenarios where the world suddenly cooperates and everybody's singing and dancing and doing all the things they should do. So to me, that's a big priority. How do we continue to maintain our energy edge? That is the key to productivity. That's the key to manufacturing. And so in my mind, it's going to take a whole country approach, government policies, and encourage and not discourage investments in oil and gas or all other forms of energy, and then capital markets that provide the necessary capital, and the private sector that has to invest in innovation to get more out of the resources we have, lower energy demand through efficiency, and lower the carbon footprint of everything. I'm an optimist in this space. Indeed, our company, like many of your companies, we've reduced our carbon footprint by 60% over the last 12 years, and we're poised for another 50% in the next 5 years. So I think it's doable, but we cannot lose sight of this whole innovation engine depends upon affordable energy.
Thanks, Greg. Noel, sharing optimism or taking us in a different direction?
Yeah, that was the key word. I love that. I'm an optimist as well, and I'd probably frame myself as an urgent optimist. We're clearly running out of time to act coherently and comprehensively. I think, obviously, I love Renee's perspective that your viewpoint determines your point of view, and obviously sitting in the sports world and the sportswear industry, I come to it with a very specific point of view, and framing it in terms of just climate change as a concept. It's a massively complex issue to solve. It's a multilateral issue to solve, and to use Greg's term, it's a whole country issue to solve. And for us, we view it through the lens of sport, and protecting the future of sport obviously is really important to us, even what we do as a company. And so for me, there are really 3 things that are incredibly important in this space. Number one, innovation. I mean, everybody's hit on it. We're a product company, and so in order for us to really turbocharge how we show up from a sustainability standpoint, how we continue to drive competitive advantage in our industry, it has to show up in our product. And so that notion of sustainable materials, the acceleration of innovation in materials in particular, because that represents nearly 80% of our carbon footprint, is incredibly important. What I've also found is integration of sustainability and the attack, if you will, the offense throughout an entire enterprise. it's not just a product problem to solve. It's not just a transportation problem to solve. You have to communicate clearly and cohesively to your consumer base. And so it really spans every aspect of the way that anybody runs an enterprise anymore. So that integration becomes really, really critical. And then Greg's point is a great one. It has to be a collaborative effort, which is why this kind of forum is so great. As powerful as our brand is, these are not problems we're going to solve on our own. We've done significant reduction in our carbon footprint. We've attacked water really, really successfully, but they're big global problems, and they're even more acute here in the U.S. And so I'm really, really passionate about the notion that this has to be a collaborative effort, and frankly, even within our competitive space, that it's a pre-competitive collaborative effort where we can lean in even with other companies in our space in the U.S. like Under Armour.
Fantastic, Noel. Thanks so much. And what a fantastic segue for me, which is always appreciated by the moderator. Speaking of collaboration and whole of country approaches, Joan, I wanted to turn to you to just share with us a little bit about some recent partnerships that you've undertaken to try and embrace this idea that no single entity can really go it alone. We're going to have to work together, and maybe talk a little bit about the bioindustrial manufacturing and design ecosystem and what your goals are there.
Thank you, and thanks everybody. So picking up on what my colleagues just described around pre-competitive collaboration and really thinking about how getting problems solved, especially grand challenges like the ones we've been talking about, don't happen in isolation. It's sort of obvious often for the university, or in the case of the people who we have with us today, you know, the research lab or the government, to be the glue that pulls together different industry partners, even sometimes competitors, to get at problems collaboratively. So we have two really big partnerships that I think can serve perhaps as illustrative examples of what we mean and how this can help us get at the particular challenge we're talking about today, and maybe some others too. So the first one Bill referred to, which is BioMade, which is a Department of Defense funded enterprise, the cornerstone funding coming from the Department of Defense, but then in-kind funding coming from us, ourselves, and all of our corporate partners here and in Minneapolis, St. Paul. That's quite a few potential partners, most of whom have joined in with us to look at a biomanufacturing ecosystem. So each particular company has a different incentive for why they might want to look at the advantages of biomanufacturing, whether it's in recycling or in production, or in the use of a new technology in order to create the process in the first place. We do research in all of those areas, but it's only if all of those things work together across the supply chain, down through a vertical, across a horizontal, that they make sense and actually have the potential to move the needle. And so with this catalyzation from the investment from the federal government, they have, I think we're the 16th center of this kind, and this has all just happened in the last few months that this has come through. So one little ray of sunshine amidst the cloudy 2020 year is the investment in this kind of ecosystem. And then we serve as the glue because we're competition neutral around how this might affect the ability for manufacturing to become more sustainable. On the other side of that coin, sort of picking up from what Renee said earlier, we have a partnership locally here called MBOLD, which is around agriculture and food and different ways in which there can be unique collaborations in order to create what needs to happen around from the ground to the table or to the shelf, as the case may be, in order to have all of that process be as sustainable as possible. So soil health, carbon capture, crop cover, distribution channels. These are all things that need to be incentivized. Sometimes you have to create the market for. Someone has to stop what they're doing to invest in the technology or research the technology. And so if we co-invest and then collaborate around where each of those innovations can fit together and work, from incentivizing the farmer to what you buy off the shelf or cook yourself, then that's the way we move the needle. So we've been really grateful, honored, and invigorated by the opportunity to serve in this way.
That's terrific. Thanks, Joan. And obviously, we will take our rays of sunshine this year in any way or place we can get them. So appreciated. I want to switch gears just a little bit because, as I said at the start, this is an incredibly broad topic this panel has been tasked with taking on. And the second half of it is really the future of work. And so I wanted to turn to John and to Nick and just talk a little bit about how, as the nation pursues a more sustainable and innovative manufacturing ecosystem, if you will, what are some of the workforce skills needs, you know, really along the continuum from early education through career learning, that we should really be focused on as a nation if we want to succeed in this area? And so, John, maybe I'll turn to you first, and then Nick.
Sure, glad to. So I thought, Joan, that you were going to mention that one of your big partnerships was the fact that Motif Foods Works was working with the University of Minnesota in the plant protein area, but you must have forgot that. So actually, that raises a really great point. So Renee mentioned, you know, they're in the food industry, and Joan is in the ag and food industry, and I've spent my career across ag and food and other tech areas, and I can tell you that the bioeconomy is coming as broadly as possible, and I would include food in the bioeconomy. And we are not prepared to have the right students, have the right people to employ at all levels. And I think we need to have a sense of urgency for that. There's no question. And so when I think about what kind of things we need to be focused on to kind of fix or at least adjust our education system, I hear a big push on STEM. And I love STEM. I think it's a great idea. But I think, you know, STEM alone is not enough. You know, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. I really believe that students need a liberal arts education on top of their technical backgrounds if they're really going to work in a company and understand their consumers, the markets they're in, what's happening in social. So, you know, we use the term diversity a lot. I think we need to start thinking about diversity in the education that we give our students at all levels, and make sure that they have as broad of opportunity as possible. So sometimes when we think it's all about innovation and it's STEM and it's math and it's science, that isn't enough, but it's important. The bioeconomy is going to be the fastest growing economy. There's no question, whether it's healthcare, whether, you know, Renee can attest, they're making packaging materials now from biological processes. They're not using chemical processes anymore. They're transitioning to all biological processes. That's going to be the direction we're going to go in. There's no question. And I think the country needs to invest in that. I would tell you that when in multiple jobs I've had, we often cannot find American educated engineers, scientists to fill all the jobs. And that's an issue for the country. We need to do that. And the other part is diversity. And I would say that the liberal arts education speaks a little bit to that diversity. I find that employees, people that start their careers, do a better job if they have a lot of broader social and interest skills, and if they have been exposed to a lot of diversity in their lives. That, you know, and let's face it, you, depending on where you live, you may not get that diversity, but whatever diversity you can accumulate in your life will only come back to you in a broader perspective, which is going to make you more innovative and more thoughtful as a colleague. And let's face it, innovation is a team sport. It's a multidisciplinary sport, and it makes a difference. And so those are my 3 points. The only thing I would add is I'd like to steal a little from Noel and say we need to have a sense of urgency about this. So I'll give you an exact example. One of my company's needs is fermentation capacity. I can't find that in the United States. It's in Europe, it's growing in Asia, but there's hardly any of that in the United States. It requires some investments, and it requires a lot of expertise that we can have in this country. There's no question, but it's not there. So, you know, maybe some of the guys who understand fermentation making beer could maybe put some tanks in play for some other things. So that's those are my thoughts.
No, that's great, John. Thank you. Nick, let me turn to you to build on that.
Geez, John, I'm sitting in Wisconsin. I think there's a lot of fermentation around here, a lot of beer, you know. But look, Hey, look, I am glad to be back at the forum. It's my pleasure. This is always a great event, driven by the leadership and the inspiration of the honorable, my friend, the honorable and eminent Deborah Wynn-Smith. I hope to see you face to face very soon, Deborah. Look, I think I'm going to pick it up from a different perspective, maybe a broader perspective from me as a toolmaker. You know, it is true that the right question is, how do we engage the American workforce in the future? You know, historians have said America doesn't rise just by innovation. It rose by the fact that we had makers and fixers across this country who were able to contribute, the great middle. And if you think about it today, there's trouble in River City. 500,000 jobs in manufacturing aren't filled. Why is that? There are two reasons. First, the skills gap. Everybody knows about this. And the upskilling in the American workforce is important. American workers are energetic and dedicated, but they need the skills, and business and education can get together to match the curriculum to what's actually needed. And we can deploy those curricula across the country to reach diverse sets of people so they can all take advantage of that. And when I say curricula, I mean not only the curricula of tomorrow, we need it today. There are 500,000 jobs empty today. So it's not just tomorrow, but that's the easy stuff. Here's the bigger problem. Workforce, things like manufacturing, things like being in repair garages, have a PR problem. We generally view people in those careers as having settled for the consolation prize of our society. They're what other people's kids do. We've lost in America the respect for the dignity of work, and therefore it's hard to attract people to these jobs because they think they are settling, and they are not. They are great jobs. You know, the COVID gives us a great advantage here. Just think about what's happening. A pedestrian example. I would suggest to you, the average family, the average person is looking forward with more angst to acquire his next roll of toilet paper than he is worried about what, I don't know, the next congressman's going to say, or what a pundit's going to say, or what a CEO's going to say, or what a university president's going to say. You see, we're at war, and it's a great withering. We're collectively working for the common defense, and those people have been at their post. You see, that toilet paper is delivered by a truck driver who can't work from home. No. It is loaded by a warehouse worker who can't work from home. It is made by a manufacturing person who can't work from home. These are the people at their post who are working to endeavor to make sure that our society does not disintegrate, to keep and maintain the world we hold so dear. Isn't it ironic that the people we say have settled, that occupy the consolation positions, the gamma minuses of our society, are the very people we turn to when the days are the darkest? So what we need to do collectively and individually is look at those not as gamma minuses, but people who are in essential causes and are American heroes of the day. So education and business and maybe government should come together and recognize that America has ascended not only on the brilliance of a few innovators, but they've ascended by the contribution of the essential many. We need to come together. If we're going to engage a workforce, we need to come together and declare and recognize and celebrate the respect for the dignity of work. Without that, we won't be successful in any of this innovation because we won't have engaged our population in it, which has always been the wellspring of our energy.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate your passion for this topic. And you know, what I'd love to do is get any thoughts from the other panelists on this topic, but maybe in the context of a question that we had come in from somebody in the audience, which struck me as in tremendous contrast from what John and what Nick just said, because the question is one around automation and robotics, and basically are workers and people doomed because the robots are taking over, which does not sound at all like the world that John and Nick just described as far as the opportunity that exists. So maybe with that as context, I just, before we move on, wanted to just ask if anyone else had a comment on the workforce front.
I'll jump in on that, Bill, if I could.
Please.
So the idea of unfilled positions is absolutely accurate. We see this data, as you might imagine, in terms of how we think about our social obligation to elevate students into opportunity and our role in the overall question of social mobility as a public land-grant institution in service to a state, but at a quality level that should make the entire country benefit and of course then enhance our competitiveness, which is ultimately what we're talking about today. And there is a perpetual angst, and if you look generation to generation, over human labor and human capital being replaced by technology, that the way in which the technology replaces the human capital changes, sometimes very rapidly, but the fact that it's been happening is age old, literally age old. And so the idea of being an educated person can mean a lot of different things. There's the job preparedness side, which Nick refers to, which we have unfilled need in. And that can happen in a variety of ways, and it needs to start as early as pre-K, we're understanding, so that people are aware of their opportunities and are able to see themselves in that way. That's the broad question of accessibility that happens long before you are deciding whether to go to college or not, or what your career choice is. And then there is this, I can't use Daryl Pine's 5 A's, but something like what he referred to in his session, the idea of accessibility, including an incentivized understanding of why you would make the choices that you would make, with full appreciation for the fact that not every student has seen themselves reflected in what it is they hope to achieve. So often when we talk about workforce, we're at the end of a journey that had to have started almost an entire lifetime before in order to see the end where we want it to be, whether it's to pursue the most technical PhD in order to become, the chief science officer for PepsiCo, or whether it's to be part of the essential many with dignity and a full understanding of what you need to do to prepare yourself for those pathways.
Thanks, Joan. Anyone else want to jump in on this, or I am happy to take us in a related. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
I'll just offer Snap-on has, we get robots every year and we haven't replaced our people with them. If you look at the productivity figures, it doesn't look like people are being replaced at any accelerated level. I think it's over the last 10 years, it's 1.1%. Over the last 15, it's 1.5. In the last 20, it was higher than that. So the singularities that we're talking about in this situation, I do not think are going to occur in my lifetime. I don't think there have been that many singularities. They proceed to the present at uncertain time constants. So I think we can work through this and maintain a human factor in all of this.
Thanks, Nick. A theme that is threaded through the discussion all day today, and I know will continue through the rest of the afternoon, has been this strong desire articulated in our report to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion, to get everyone on the playing field as much as possible. I'd love your thoughts on that topic, and maybe again in the context of another question that just came in, which is talking about, are we headed towards a society where everyone has to be college educated? Or is there still an opportunity for a middle class that perhaps fits in somewhere else, whether that's a 2-year degree, a technical skill, or something else? So, anybody want to jump in on that topic?
Maybe I can go, Bill. Listen, I grew up in the Netherlands, where not everybody went to college. It was vocational education, 2-year programs, and there was a role in society and the workplace for everybody. So the notion of going to college, coming to the US, everybody has to go to college, was always a little foreign to me. And I think the discussion is going to the right direction, that we are, customizing education and wherever the need is. On diversity and inclusion, of course, listen, if I drive from my bubble here in Connecticut into Manhattan, I can see where the problem lies in terms of education. It's just not fairly distributed. I think we all agree to that, and the report is addressing it. As companies, as industries, we are putting our commitments out there when it comes to racial inequality and addressing it. We're spending money over the next 5 years to bring in more people, more diversity, African Americans, Latinos, and ultimately, and that's, forgive me, maybe the Dutch approach to this is those are beautiful goals. What matters is year-on-year progress in a credible fashion. So let's stop talking less about the numbers. We're going to invest 400 million. We're going, PepsiCo, great, 400 million, good. I'm proud of the company. But let's now focus all our energy not talking about the target, but about making progress, because it's high time to just do that.
Yeah, I agree with what Renee just said completely. And then I think the other challenge that I've found, discovered through my work with the Greater Houston Partnership, just in Houston, Texas, is one of the big issues is just connectivity. So if you look at 85% of the Black kids in Houston, Texas, 85% of them don't have access to broadband, Wi-Fi, those basic things in one of the largest cities in America, which still just blows my mind, right? So part of the solution has got to be, connecting these kids, to this bigger world out there. And I don't believe, I agree with Renee, I don't believe you have to have a college degree. There's going to be plenty of opportunity in this space. Somebody this morning said blue collar STEM, white collar STEM. I mean, the world's getting more complicated, more technological, and there's going to be space for everyone in there. We've just got to bring them into the fold, as Renee said. And I'm with Renee 100%. Used to work for Shell, so 25 years with Dutch guys. I love them. He's right. Lofty goals, but what are you going to do tomorrow, right?
Well, we are, believe it or not, down to about our last minute here. So I just wanted to, Noel, John, any thoughts on that last topic of engaging more Americans in the innovation ecosystem around the country?
I would say that all levels of education are going to be required. There's no question. I mean, we don't need all PhDs and masters. We need a lot of people that can be really smart technicians, and those should be really good paying jobs. But it does require knowledge, and I think we need to figure out ways to get that educated. I've heard several people talk about a more robust system of technical high schools, vocational high schools, to get kids on a good path to be able to get these good technical jobs, but don't require you to go to college. And I think that would be really helpful.
Great.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think if I represent a Nike perspective, we need people who have design degrees who can design shoes, and we need people in our manufacturing facilities here in Beaverton and in Missouri that manufacture the airbags that go into those shoes. So diversity of workforce, diversity of experience is another dimension to diversity that's incredibly important. And I think that notion that somehow we're all going to have 4-year degrees and people will be edged out, I just doesn't jive with at least my mentality.
I greatly appreciate that. I think that's such an important message to try and get out as widely as possible. Well, with that, let me thank the panel. I really appreciate it. Terrific discussion, fast discussion. But I think we hit upon a lot of important points. So thank you very much, and hope everybody enjoys the rest of the afternoon.